So, I wrote a letter to somebody who has been detailing me how they have converted from atheism to Christianity after a few experiences of being flooded by the Holy Spirit. And I decided to read this letter to all of you just to give my opinion on these types of things. So that's the context of this. I'm just going to read what I wrote to my friend who has converted to Christianity because of his personal experiences with feeling a rush of the Holy Spirit within him. Regarding your feeling of being flooded by the Holy Spirit, I have reservations. As you've noted a few times, you've converted to Christianity, and I still have a non-theistic perspective. In addition to my lack of faith, I've had experiences within the church that frame my view of your flooded experiences and spiritual warfare as you interpret it. When I was between the ages of 4 and 10, I was dragged to church by my mother each Sunday to Glad Tidings Church in Long Beach, California. And in that church, they believed in gifts from God, which are magical superpowers, such as faith healing, casting out of demons, speaking in tongues, being slain in the Spirit, special abilities to see meanings in the Bible that non-believers could not see, and the ability to recognize others who are not saved or are saved, and the ability to discern the truth, which is basically like lie detecting. One offshoot of the slain in the Spirit thing that Benny Hinn was famous for happened at other events that were non-specific to the slaying being a central part of the scheduled event. Sure, the guest speakers would come to our church that were known for their slaying powers, and that would happen like once a month, and the pastor would give them a cut of the tithings for the week, you know. Sometimes the donation plate was passed around for tithing, just specifically for that show, just specifically for that guest. But there were other events where similar effects happen. And one of those was a spontaneous fainting and trance-like state that happened at Christian rock and roll concerts, where people would fall out in the crowd after being overcome with their emotions and attributing it to being flooded with the Holy Spirit, sometimes even breaking out into speaking in tongues, baby babbling activity. Another of this type of phenomenon was something that I felt happened to me to a smaller extent a few times, was the altar call. The altar call was basically the pastor calling into the audience for anyone who had not yet given themselves to Jesus, or given themselves over fully to Jesus. And I felt like those sermons were always targeting me directly, in the way that the pastor would describe the reasons for someone maybe not feeling like Christ was with them. And although I felt like the sermon was directed at me, I was never alone in going up to the altar because, 24 other people would also follow me, and it was, everyone just tearfully bowing in prayer at the foot of the altar, and the pastor and the deacons and other people who were, admin in the church would come lay on their hands, and sometimes it kind of looked like a large football huddle, but everyone's crying, and some people, pass out, start speaking in tongues, flop like fishes, stuff like that. But I always felt like afterwards, like, along with a sense of, like, relief that I did it, I felt this feeling like a suspicion that they had of me, like, because I admitted that I didn't feel like Jesus was within me, and I said, I need to participate in this altar call, that I was then admitting that I was weak in my faith or wavering, and I couldn't be trusted with church business. And I knew that I didn't believe in anything that church believed by the age of 7. And I never felt like the church accepted me as someone who would ever be a church leader or even a Sunday school teacher, because I just didn't get it. To me, the emperor had no clothes. And I still felt like this rush that was like a panic attack, like a feeling when I did those altar calls. I felt, like stage fright. And I didn't want to be looked at by everyone in the crowd, and it was like an ordeal that you have to get through in order to, participate in that sort of altar call service. I've felt other comparable things since that time. I've also learned about the brainwashing techniques that cults use to control their flocks. And I've also learned in my career as a psychotherapist to recognize the effects of psychological phenomenon like this. But as far as my personal experiences, I'll say when I was 14 was the first time I really, really felt something that was similar to that sort of altar call experience, and it had nothing to do with a religious setting or spirituality. It was a similar rush that I felt when I lied to one of my friends about having my portion of a school project done, when he then informed me that an actual NASA astronaut was visiting his dad that day and was at his house, and he wanted to see the project. And the entire project, which had not been touched by me in the slightest, was actually in my bedroom, and it really just consisted of like a balsa wood structure that was intended to support some extreme weights of over like 500 pounds, like Olympic style standard weights being stacked on it. And it was, it had to fit some specifications of, it had to be at least 10 inches tall, and it could only use like 10 grams of balsa wood and super glue in total. So, it also had to fit around the 2-inch pole that the Olympic weights would be stacked on, and without touching it. And so the shape that the balsa wood structure was in when it came into my possession and it was my turn to add to it, it was still in that state. And I had lied, saying that I had been working on it, and I had not. And now an astronaut was wanting to see the project after I lied. And so I panicked, and I knew that his dad, and the astronaut would be driving towards my house, and I shut all the curtains, turned out all the lights, and hid in my bedroom, and I was the only one home. So the rush came over me when they were knocking on the door, and my friend was yelling to get my attention, but I was not home. And I can remember feeling the same extreme version of pressure of an altar call. Only in that particular moment, that was the worst I had ever felt it. And that's when I started to recognize that this is not just something where you could ascribe it to a spiritual moment. This had nothing to do with spirituality. It was me. I had lied to someone, and they were, they called me on it, and there I was, just hiding from the truth. But back to a spiritual setting, a couple years after that, I was 16, and I was an openly defiant atheist kid, but I still went to Christian youth groups. One was a Methodist group, and one was a Baptist church. And that was because my best friends were there. And that was how I got fellowship and friendship with my friends, was just going to their youth groups, because there was no such thing as like an atheist club in my town. There were some Christians who dabbled in, the fashion of witchcraft or goth dress, like the movies The Craft and The Crow. But I was the only one brave enough to just all out say that I did not believe in Christianity, and that I felt nothing of a spirit within me. During one event called a lock-in, which is basically a co-ed supervised sleepover at a church, there was this activity that had never happened before at the lock-ins, and never happened again afterwards. But basically a whole bunch of kids had gone into one of the Sunday school rooms, turned the light out, and they were sitting in a circle, and each one of them was holding a candle that was not lit. And in the dark, one person got to light their candle, and they got to speak, and they were basically praying their most solemn, desired prayer outcome. They were just putting it out into the group. But the spooky setting kind of was setting the tone of somberness, right? And so one candle was lit, and that person was allowed to talk and say whatever they felt compelled to say or pray about, and that person then lit the next candle with their candle and then blew their candle out, and then that person had the floor to speak their mind and pray about anything. And when it came to my turn, I decided to use the powerful emotional nature of this experience to try to, once again, try to have this spiritual experience that everyone's promising me. And I asked Jesus into my heart in front of all of them, and I felt that same rush of panic come over me. And it started with the person right before me getting their candle lit, and they were speaking, and then it ended after my share But I really got this rush of dread, and after I did that, my friends patted me on the back, and a few cheered, and but after that night, I realized that it wasn't like the Holy Spirit entering me. It was just really a panic attack, and there was nothing else different about the way that I saw the world after that experience. It was just like stage fright. And since then, I have had similar panic rushes as test anxiety for all the big finals and licensure tests that I've had in life. I've even had this equal and opposite reaction. Prepare for TMI here, because I have noticed that about 2 hours after having one of those sort of panicky attacks, that I tend to have IBS and sometimes explosive diarrhea. Houston, we have liftoff. And to me, it's like a biological sign that the danger is past and my body is, relaxing. And just as much as I have panic, I'll have the opposite effect of relaxed bowels. So, I just notice that these are biological symptoms of high stress situations. And I wrote to my friend further saying, I don't mean to demean your beliefs. I just see this flooding through the perspective of non-belief, science, and empiricism. That was the end of my letter to my friend, and he's not the first and probably won't be the last person to switch sides based on things that I have a different perspective on, as far as what is or is not evidence and what constitutes a spiritual experience. That's all I got for you guys today. See you when I see you.